Hello, and welcome to this week's Monday mini edition of the Scrimshaw Show. My name is Emma Scrimshaw. On today's podcast, we're going to be diving into one specific topic, as we are wont to do on these minis. And this week's topic, Ron Johnson, and whether or not his apparent decision to run for re-election helps or hurts the Wisconsin GOP. Follow me on Twitter at eScrimshaw. Follow the Scrimshaw Show on Twitter at Scrimshaw_show. Read all my writing at scrimshawunscripted.substack.com. Follow the Twitter account for that at unscriptedscrim. And buy Salvation in the Storm. It's my pinned tweet on Twitter, and I would greatly appreciate y'all buying my book. Because, well, I wrote a book, and it would be nice if people bought it and read it. So it's come out this weekend, that Ron Johnson, the erstwhile two-term senator from Wisconsin, has signaled to his friends informally that he will be running for a third term, despite not having made that decision public yet. This goes against an initial two-term pledge he made when he was elected to the Senate, but frankly, politician overextending their term limits is not a scandal, nor should Democrats be in any way, shape, or form, persuaded or convinced or, baited to go down that cul-de-sac. What the cul-de-sac they will be baited down to is Johnson's increasing anti-vax sentiments about COVID. And I don't mean anti-vax mandates. I mean he's actively questioned the point of vaccination. He said the vaccination has been extended to too many people. He's said that if vaccines don't reduce cases, as opposed to, and I'm going to say merely in the context of what he means, but, merely reduce hospitalizations and severe outcomes, then they were a failure. And I don't really know why. I don't really understand how anyone could think that, and it's, basic insanity, but it's also the, official position of a U.S. Senator at this point. And so a lot of people have traduced that Johnson is more beatable than the average incumbent senator, and even potentially that he would be a better opponent for Democrats to run against than another Republican if he were to retire. The case for that makes some amount of sense, in that Johnson's previous electoral history suggests that he will be able to outrun the top of the ticket in white suburbs, basically the WOW collar in around Milwaukee. And that's true if you look at his 2016 results and even his 2010 results. Like, it's a fair argument based on his electoral history. And the argument goes, if he can't do that again, he's a worse candidate. I get the argument. I genuinely do. The problem is that I don't necessarily think that the Wisconsin GOP have a better candidate around them. And there is a benefit to not having to spend money and resources and time on a separate primary. If Johnson were to retire, you have a primary that's probably Mike Gallagher, representative for the Wisconsin 8th, which is Green Bay and assorted other things around Green Bay. Scott Walker might throw his hand into the race. Paul Ryan's gonna at least have to have a conversation. Other Republicans are presumably going to be interested in a way that they would not be in a Johnson race, and that is going to be a fairly, it's going to be a fairly controversial, fairly noisy primary. And I think Gallagher would probably win that primary. I think he is the next Republican senator from Wisconsin whenever that comes. But the problem with Gallagher is I don't necessarily think Gallagher is some home run as a candidate, because dude voted against the original CARES Act. Not CARES 2, not HEROES, not the December 2020 agreement, not the American Rescue Plan. He voted against the original CARES Act. He voted against the original COVID relief package. He was one of 40 House Republicans to do so. And in a state which has a lot of farming and a lot of small businesses, voting against COVID provisions that did a lot of good for a lot of people is not going to go over super well. I think Gallagher, I don't think that's a death knell for Gallagher, and I think he can explain that vote away. But I don't think a guy who voted against CARES is necessarily some home run candidate that you want to get rid of an incumbent for. We don't know whether Gallagher can raise money at the industrial level you need to for Senate campaigns at this point. We don't know. Gallagher doesn't have the same self-funding ability that Ron Johnson does, which is how Johnson managed to keep in the race last time against Russ Feingold, despite the fact that most Senate Republicans had written off his chances of winning again. And we also don't have any evidence that Gallagher is a good or great candidate statewide when Ron Johnson outran Donald Trump by something like 5 points the last time he was on the ballot. Now, having said that, Gallagher does have a record of outperforming in his own district. But the thing about safe seat members, and Gallagher, Donald Trump won Gallagher's district as currently constituted by, I think, something like 15, 16 points, is that partisanship is weird, but also there is an effect of basically if a party isn't going to win a seat, they do not campaign for the congressional seat, and therefore your candidate effects can get wonky when you're running safe seat members in swing states. You see it. I mean, you see it all the time with Democrats who, are really good candidates for their urban metropolitan districts, and then suddenly cannot, do particularly well the rest of the way. And I mean, even Kirsten Gillibrand, who I know it's New York, and I know New York is not nearly as competitive, but Kirsten Gillibrand, even though she does very well upstate, does not do nearly as well upstate as she used to do when she was a House member there. And there is a chance that Gallagher, in a more nationalized race against a serious Democrat, would not be able to win his district by the nearly, I think it might have been over 25 that he won it by last time, and he would do something closer to the district's presidential partisanship. And we have no idea how he would do in the suburbs. We have no idea how he would do in Kenosha. We have no idea how he would do in the WOW. We have no idea how he would do in all the counties around Madison. And without knowing that, Gallagher is more of a wide open risk that a lot of people have painted him as. And in that case, I think taking Johnson is probably the slightly better option. Now, the next question is for the Democrats is, okay, so if Rodeo's the nominee, how do you beat him, and can they beat him? And I think the answer to the question is, can they beat him? Sure. Will they? Probably not. I mean, if you were asking me right now, I think Ron Johnson wins by 3. I don't feel great about the margin prediction. Don't hold me to that. It's January, the election's November. There'll be plenty of times to see how popular or unpopular Joe Biden is, how popular or unpopular the Democratic Party is. We'll know whether it's Mandela Barnes or one of the other candidates. I still suspect it'll be Mandela Barnes, but we don't actually know that for sure. And I think Democrats can win, but the thing is that the thing that has always hurt Democrats in midterms is black turnout falls, right? And we saw it in Virginia too. Black turnout fell more than white turnout did. And if the share of the electorate in Wisconsin gets whiter, Democrats are done. Joe Biden only won the state by 0.6%. And if black turnout falls at all, that margin's gone, right? In the same way that even though Joe Biden only won Georgia by 0.25%, the electorate that showed up on the day in Georgia would have voted for Biden by 2 or 3 or 4 points, right? We don't have an affirmative answer to that. But Warnock did worse than Biden in specific pockets of very wealthy Atlanta and won by 2. So I think it's fair to say it was a Biden plus 3 electorate at least. And the problem is, in the reverse, is that the electorate that shows up, unless Mandela Barnes can really, really, really get that black turnout out, in a way that Democrats did not get out in 2010, 2014, or 2021, that's a real risk. And the thing is, if you get an electorate that already voted, that would have voted for Donald Trump, then what you're also going to get is an electorate where where Democrats are not going to be able to rely on every Biden voter because there will be some Biden, Ron Johnson voters. And if Democrats can't get their shit together, and I'm deeply and increasingly pessimistic on Democrats' ability to actually do that, they're not going to win. The best path for them to do so is ride Tony Evers' coattails to better than Joe Biden results in the driftless. Then just try and rob the score in Milwaukee with as good a black turnout operation as you can create, and then just try and match the suburban vote of Joe Biden's with a lot of attacks on Ron Johnson for being anti-vaccination and all that stuff. I think it can work to an extent, because in a national environment where Republicans are going to probably win the House popular vote at this point, Joe Biden is more unpopular than he was the day of the Virginia elections right now. And even if he gets some of that back, it's unlikely that we're going to get back to a D2 environment. It's not great for Democrats, right? And the thing that Virginia showed is that some states are going to have plenty of room for Democrats still to fall into rural areas, and one of the states that's most concerning for Democrats, because we are still reliant on doing not terribly in rural areas, is Wisconsin. And there's definitely room for that still to fall. And I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying it's not a great proposition for Democrats right now. Wisconsin's probably the Biden 2020 state most likely to vote for a Republican nominee in 2024. It's certainly the state I feel the least confident in terms of its long-term trajectory. The two cities make up a smaller and smaller proportion of the state than you would ideally want. Certainly a smaller proportion of the state, and then you can do it either by the county that takes in the big city or the metro area generally. But Milwaukee is, one CD. Madison's, and Madison and some other stuff is one CD. Right? These are smaller metro areas than Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are. Right? And if you're looking at, a situation where Democrats are going to increasingly have to win a state out of 2 of 8 congressional districts, and there's still a lot of room for us to fall in the other 6 congressional districts, that's not a great spot for Democrats to be in. Yes, it sucks that Ron Johnson is clearly the favorite to win re-election at this point, but we have to accept reality, which is Ron Johnson is very clearly the favorite to win this race. He's likely to win. He's got probably an 80% chance. And Ron Johnson, unfortunately, is probably the best choice for the Republicans, and is certainly is not a good candidate for Democrats to have to run against. And everybody who wants to believe that his incendiary remarks of the last 12 months are going to help him, probably are going to help Democrats, probably not, and certainly not enough to arrest a not particularly good national environment and untested Democratic nominees in their own right. Thank you so much for listening to this Monday mini edition of the Scrimshaw Show. Follow me on Twitter at eScrimshaw. Follow the show on Twitter at Scrimshaw_show. Read my work at scrimshawunscripted.substack.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe to the main podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Let me know what you think of the show. Tweet at me at eScrimshaw, or just DM me, whatever you think. If you have guest ideas, show ideas, topics you'd like me to get to on the next topic, leave a comment in the comment box below, and everybody have a good week.